Welcome to Periop Talk, your go-to source for the latest insights in perioperative nursing. I'm Nikisha Tolliver, the 2024 president of AORN, and I'm so excited to bring you a conversation with Linda Groah, AORN's longest-serving CEO on the verge of her retirement. Linda has had an amazing impact and has done so much to help shape our profession in many ways over the last 18 years. So in this episode, we'll discuss the significance of all of those changes that were around training and education, regulation, technology, and how those changes have molded our profession for the future. So I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Welcome to Periop Talk, making surgery safer one podcast at a time, with brief, practical information for you to take back to the OR.
So Linda, as you look back over the time since you stepped in as CEO of AORN, what have been the most profound changes in perioperative nursing? And how has that role of the periop nurse evolved over the past 2 decades?
Wow. Nikisha, so much has changed. Technology, I'll start with technology, minimally invasive surgery, robotics. And I think that all fed into increased focus on patient safety, the use of checklists, the evolution that robotics has resulted in on the team-based care that has to happen if you're using robotics or minimally invasive. The pre-op briefings and debriefings, great steps forward in team action together, really building a culture of safety. The role of the patient of the perioperative nurse as a patient advocate has also been greatly enhanced, improved, and recognized. And I think that's what's really an important factor, is that it has been really actualized. We use the term perioperative, but we didn't really implement it. And now pre-op, intra-op, and post-op is actually part of the expectation of the care that we deliver. Certainly the movement of surgery from inpatient to ambulatory surgery and the increased acuity with which those patients are being cared for in an ambulatory setting and going home right after surgery, that really does depend on good pre- and post-op teaching of the patients. And then along recently comes ERAS. ERAS as a protocol in the enhanced recovery after surgery is lending itself to another whole era of protocols and how nurses can be involved in that total patient care. Most recently, cultural sensitivity in nursing care and developing care that is culturally sensitive has become a very much a part of most of the perioperative nurses today. I think another emphasis that we've seen just since COVID changed a lot of things. And one of the things that we've begun to see is the emphasis on stress management and the emotional well-being of the nursing staff. Perioperative nurses not only recognizing others, but it's important for themselves. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about travelers. Travelers coming into the operating room were very much a realization that you don't have to be on staff for years in order to come in and do an open heart case, for instance. Not always welcomed by the surgeons, but they provide great care and loving care to the patients. So I think if, technology and focus on patient safety have really been the two largest areas that have changed over the decades.
So when I think back on much of that you just talked about, I think to a pivotal time where the WHO checklist came along. So how do you think the introduction of the whose surgical safety checklist impacted perioperative nursing practice?
Well, first of all, of course, patient safety, and that is it prevented. We hope the wrong side, wrong site, wrong patient surgery that had been occurring, and it's not gone completely. But in 2000, there was a report that was released by the Institute of Medicine called "To Err is Human," and I think that really started all of the movement toward patient safety. And for the surgical patient, the wrong side, wrong site was absolutely one of the most important areas that we needed to focus on. So it really did make a big difference in terms of how the perioperative nurse became an advocate. Uh, it, it, it actually gave perioperative nurses the authority and a voice in being able to stop the line, which is prevalent now in most operating rooms when anyone on the team sees something happening. But the OR perioperative nurse is the one who really is the captain of that ship, so to speak, in terms of making sure that the checklist is utilized and implemented.
So another thing that was, I think, a really big thing as it relates to perioperative nursing, and probably even prior to my years as when I started in the periop arena, there was a lot of discussion around the RN circulator and how many patients can you take care of at one time. So what were the challenges and successes in implementing the RN circulator mandate in various states, as you recall?
That was a real experience because the thing that the group that was most opposed to the RN circulator was the state hospital associations, and they're very powerful in most states. So that was the biggest voice against it. And I think that, they were absolutely certain it was already happening in every operating room. Well, we knew that was not true. There was not a nurse in every operating room. Maybe in some cases there was a nurse going between two ORs, or maybe there were technicians circulating, and they're not licensed individuals. So it was really important that we continued to advocate for that. And we were successful in 25 states where it is now mandated, and in 17 states for ambulatory surgery. So there's a significant number that require the circulator. And that's where the one patient, one nurse, that terminology, that phrase, grew out of the role of the circulator.
Formal. How did AORN's advocacy affect the ability to eliminate surgical smoke and contribute to the improved patient and nurse safety that we talk about so much in the periop arena?
That's a really good question because there's a long history to smoke in operating rooms, surgical smoke in the operating rooms. And Brenda Ulmer, one of our past presidents, was very much focused on that during her presidency, and it waxed and waned. And then at some point, it began to get more traction behind it. And that traction that led to the smoke elimination and how important it was some research that was done. Surgical smoke was proven to cause respiratory issues, eye irritation, headaches, and long-term risks, including cancer. And so there was a lot of research that was done to really demonstrate that it was a significant workplace safety and therefore a patient safety issue. So the advocacy that AORN picked up on this, which is really interesting because it resulted, I think, really in developing the products that are currently used now to evacuate smoke. So many of our vendor partners developed smoke evacuation that many of the states now, 19 states, have adopted as standards to require the evacuation of surgical smoke. So AORN played a significant role in that legislation, and we continue to. Let me just say there are a number of states that we are continuing to advocate for that, and we expect we'll get at least 2 more, maybe even this calendar year.
Yeah, what an incredible amount of work, and more work to be done. But that is an amazing, feat so far, as we continue to walk that road to eliminate surgical smoke.
I think one of the things that we can't really negate in this particular um, legislative event and the work that we did, the national AORN in Denver has 2 employees that focus on government relations and legislation. And they really will organize things, but the actual work that's done is done by the grassroots.
Ugh.
And that is something that has made the difference in the legislation that we have moved forward on smoke, is the grassroots efforts in each of those states made the difference. We can't do that at the national level, but at the local level, the chapters and the members of AORN can really make a difference. And we've demonstrated that.
Absolutely. And a nurse's voice, especially collectively, is really, really strong. And so I think it's so important to highlight what happens from a local level because, I say all the time, that's where the magic happens. And it's the same from an advocacy perspective as well. So, Linda, what were some of the most significant changes in perioperative nursing education during this time?
Really good question because things continue to change and we're on this call now. And as we talk, there's probably changes happening, but certainly simulation based training and learning has had an incredible impact on the education of not only perioperative nurses, but the entire team. Many hospitals have put in simulation centers, and perioperative nurses are part of being sent to the simulation center to participate in new procedures as they're developed, or even to work with the team. And improving team communications has also been a result of the simulation. And then, in addition, of course, there's virtual reality, augmented reality, and all the training that we do in robotic surgery. With the emphasis in all of those areas in using the technology safely. The interdisciplinary education is beginning to get started through these attempts. But more importantly, is that some schools of medicine and schools of nursing are combining some of the interdisciplinary training for people going into medicine and nursing. And that's significant. That's where I think it really begins to make a difference is the team that learns together, learns how to, I would say, play together, but communicate, be responsible for what each is responsible for and understand that with the patient. So I think all of it is focused on improving care for the patient and also how does quality improvement play into that? We never talked about quality improvement in the 2000s. That was something that we didn't talk much about. But along came the patient safety movement, and lo and behold, all of a sudden it was part of what the responsibilities were. I think the other thing that we've seen is micro learning and using mobile apps. People don't want to sit in front of a computer for an hour to go through a boring PowerPoint. Um, Flip the classroom is another great way to read an article or a case study and then come together for the discussion of that, not being lectured to, for instance. Um, eh, COVID, what can we say? The positives about COVID lots of negatives, but the positive was it really did bring virtual training forward. Um, Everybody learned that they could do in front of their computer, they could have a classroom. They could learn new techniques, new policies and procedures. They didn't have to leave home to go somewhere to do that. And that has been, and that need resulted in improved technology. And we're doing this call on Zoom, and this is a perfect example. 20 years ago, could have never been able to do this because we didn't have the technology. But the technology has advanced, and virtual sessions now are quite frequently the way of things being done, as well as being enhanced going forward. The importance of leadership skills. We now think of every nurse as a leader, and that's new. And that's a new responsibility that we have provided to new nurses coming out of training and into the professional field, is that every nurse is a leader and they have that responsibility. In addition, we've seen advanced roles in for perioperative nurses. For instance, the RNFA, the Registered Nurses of First Assistant, has gained a lot of importance, as well as nurse practitioners coming into the operating room to assist in surgery. So we've just seen the perioperative education evolve over time into being very active, very technology oriented. And, we say that perioperative nursing is high tech, but it is also high touch. So as technology has improved and we've learned to use technology, so too have we become more aware of how important we are to the patient. That patient touch and empathy cannot be replaced by technology.
What led you to focus on evidence-based guidelines for perioperative nursing to shift from standards of practice?
Interesting. Again, the patient safety movement had a lot to do with that. But I think, standards were based on best practice. They were not based on evidence. So consistently, we were challenged on what we were doing. And, well, why do we have to wear a attire? Why do we have to cover up our hair? Why does the patient have to be positioned in a specific way to avoid pressure points? All of that was best practice, and we knew it by word of mouth. We've documented that, and we did have standards of practice, but it wasn't enough. And we knew that we had to go to the next step. So evidence-based practice gave us the opportunity to focus on patient outcomes and looking at them consistently across the care models. It reduces variability because everybody's using the same evidence to implement in their practice. It is also cost effective because if we are looking at evidence-based practice, then there isn't a lot of past traditions associated with it. It is determined and governed by what the evidence says. So it really does make it much more cost effective. And I think finally, they provide the best framework for decision making and the care of the surgical patient. I think the other kind of benefit along those lines is if everybody's using evidence-based practice, going from one environment to the next, changing jobs, teaching new students becomes much more acceptable using the same ground rules, if you were, and those are applied from the evidence-based practice.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks, Nikisha, for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next encounter.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Periop Talk. It was an honor to have Linda Groah with us. Her legacy as a transformative leader will continue to inspire generations of nurses for many years to come. What advancements in the last 15 to 20 years have impacted you the most? Tell us your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll see you next time as we talk to Linda about the future of perioperative nursing.
Enjoyed the episode? Please like, comment, and subscribe. For additional periop content, look for us on Instagram at AORN Pics and on Facebook and LinkedIn at AORN. You can also find us at aorn.org. Thanks for listening.